Today we're talking about the latest addition to Sony's R line of alpha cameras, the a7R5. I was given the a7R5 from Sony for just 2.5 days, so this won't be a be-all end-all review. It's definitely like a first introduction-y kind of take, my first thoughts about the camera, so let's get right into it. It is a huge improvement from the a7R3. So the first thing that I noticed when I was walking around was the quality of the EVF in this camera. It's really good. Not only has the EVF been upgraded, but they also did major upgrades to the tilting screen on the back of the camera. The a7R5 comes with a new 4-axis multi-angle LCD monitor. It tilts and flips and gives you a lot more freedom of where you can look at your monitor. The other main thing about this camera that's been upgraded is the autofocus. The a7R5 has the new Bions XR, and it actually has 2 of those, and it's accompanied by a brand new chip, the AI processing unit. It gives the same 61 megapixel sensor that the a7R4 had and supercharges it essentially. They took the brain out of one and put a new brain in it, and it's way smarter. In addition to the human and animal eye tracking, we now have car, train, and plane autofocus. From the small amount of testing that I was able to do in the time that I had it, I would say that it works easily as good as the rest of Sony's autofocusing features, definitely with the tap to focus. For video, it was just as accurate as the FX3 or the FX30, and for photos, it was fast, super fast. It got eye tracking so rock solid sharp, and even when there was slight obstructions over the human eye or there was a massive difference in exposure, it just nailed it pretty much every time in the tests that I did with it. I found if there's like multiple subjects, it has a little bit more trouble with that, but if you're just locked onto one particular subject, it works fantastic. Human AF is a little bit more advanced because, you know, people are the things that we're shooting most often. With the couple critters that I was able to find in my neighborhood, I would say that it tracked the animals pretty well also. There's a couple shots that I got that were really dark, especially with this squirrel. I clearly missed the exposure settings on this shot, but because you get so much information in these images and because of the autofocus, I was able to pull out a lot of detail and actually get a pretty decent photo of this squirrel. I would say that the fact that I was still able to make a reasonable looking photo is a testament to the quality of this camera as well. Maybe a little bit my editing skill, but we'll give it to the camera for this one. Something that I wasn't made aware of until after I'd finished my testing of the camera is Sony's face registration feature that lets you register different faces and actually improves the autofocus in that camera. I guess it's part of their AI system where it learns the face and then can lock on really easy. If it knows the general look of someone's face ahead of time, it can store those. I think you can get about 8 different faces saved, so if you were doing an event or you were doing wedding type content with this camera, that in my opinion would be an insanely powerful feature. So if I get my hands on this camera again, I'm definitely going to be trying that out. Something I would say about the camera that is not necessarily a downside, but definitely isn't an upside, is the speed at which this camera can take photos. The a7R5 is definitely a camera that you could use for sports photography, but I personally don't see it being the best use of this particular camera. With its 10 FPS and its buffer of up to 583 shots of continuous burst in mechanical or electronic shutter, I still just don't see it as a sports camera. I really do see the R series of cameras as cameras that you use for high resolution work like product photography, portrait work, or like big billboard type work, something like that where you're going to be blowing it up very large or doing prints. I see the A1 or the A9 much better cameras for being sports related, as their burst rate is much higher. I went out and did a bunch of photos with some skateboarders, and from my experience using this camera and other cameras like my a7R3, they're really high quality images that come out of them, but they're not for speed. They're definitely more about resolution. I do band photography as well, like live production kind of stuff, and for me, it's always been a little bit frustrating with these kinds of cameras where they max out at about 10 FPS. Sometimes you miss those crucial in-between moments when it's trying to like cycle through to the next shot, which can be quite frustrating if you cannot repeat the thing that you are trying to shoot. The fact that you can do that long of a buffer doesn't really sell this camera to me, because for me that's not really an issue. You could, like, if you're doing product photography, that 10 FPS is probably going to be good enough, but if you're doing team sports or stuff like that, you're going to end up missing those in-between moments. If you are a multi-purpose shooter, it's going to be really good for you. For me, I do photo and video, so having a camera that can shoot all these different video formats and then shoot extremely high quality photos, that's something that's important to me. If you just do photo or if you just do video, it might not be the camera for you, but if you do both, it is fantastic. I've owned the A7R III for a while, and it's allowed me to do a bunch of different types of jobs. And as far as I can tell from using this camera and what I've read, the A7R V is basically a very nicely upgraded version of the A7R IV. So it might not be as big of a jump from the A7R III to the A7R IV, but if you really need certain features like 8K shooting, if you do a lot of reframing and post for video, that might be something that you really need to look into. Or if you really, really need those new autofocus features, I would say this would be a really good option for you. But if you're just looking to upgrade from the A7R IV, maybe not the upgrade that you're looking for, but definitely it's going to be that upgrade if you're coming from the A7R III. For me, I look at camera upgrades similar to how phones get upgraded. Each iteration, there's not a huge amount of difference between the two, but if you skip a generation, then it's going to be a huge difference for you. So depends on where you are and what you're looking for at the time that this camera is coming out. Personally, if you are coming from an A7R III, getting a little bit tired of that and need something to upgrade to, or you just want a second camera body, deal done. Get the A7R V. It's really, really powerful, and I can see it being many different kinds of people's workhorses for years and years and years, or I guess at least until the A7R VI comes out. So again, this is just a really quick first look at the features of the A7R V. In the future, if it's wanted, we might do a comparison of the A1, the A9, and the A7R V, but that's something to be looked at in the future. Again, I really enjoyed using the camera, so I can definitely see myself using this on future photography projects. All right, so that's all I have to say about the A7R V for now. Thanks a lot for having a look over with this camera with me, and I will see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye.